The bill was good to go when it left committee. Unfortunately, once it left committee, it's transformed into a document that my colleagues have turned into a culture war document.
The language in this bill is very straightforward. It would simply roll back Biden's illegal DOD abortion travel policy issued under the October 2022 memorandum, returning DOD to the practice in place for decades. Abortion is not medical care for the baby. It's a brutal procedure that ends the lives of unborn children through suction, dismemberment, or chemical poisoning. The Biden administration's made taxpayer funding available for abortion at any stage of pregnancy, even for late-term abortions that inflict excruciating pain and suffering on the child. This human rights abuse should not be paid for or encouraged by the U.S. government.
In this Congress alone, in the past year and a half, we have voted 15 times to strip a woman of a right to choose in some form or fashion. Sometimes it's the right to travel. Sometimes it's the right to medication. Sometimes it's the right to understanding if a healthcare center is actually able to perform an abortion or not. It's misinformation. It's disinformation. So I'm deeply disappointed that we're again in this place where my colleagues won't stop attacking a woman's right to choose, and now a woman in uniform, someone who's putting her life on the line to serve her country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The annual National Defense Authorization Act is the Pentagon's budget. It's perhaps one of the most important tasks we fulfill here in Congress, protecting our national security, taking care of service members, their families, their housing. It's been one of the few places where we have bipartisan agreement, despite what you see on TV. Most disappointing, again, is despite what my colleagues say, that they were good with overturning Roe v. Wade, but then they'll leave it to the states to decide what to do. Beyond that, we are once again watching them try and strip away a basic right to provide reproductive health care to our women in uniform. It's dividing us at a time where we should be coming together on national security challenges, and it says specifically that uniformed women do not have the right to leave the state, get some time off to leave the state to get an abortion if they need it. So if you're forced to be based in Texas and you get pregnant and you don't want to be pregnant, they are trying to repeal that woman's right to take time off and travel to another state to get an abortion. They also are trying to repeal the right for a servicewoman to take time off to help her daughter get an abortion in another state, not even a woman in uniform. So I'm deeply disappointed in, again, my colleagues' constant attempts to repeal a woman's right to choose. Again, in public, they may say, well, we were good with Roe. We're thrilled that Roe was overturned, but now we're leaving it alone. We have seen a ton of other divisive amendments come into the NDAA, something that, again, should never be a place where we do culture wars. I'm also very disappointed in the refusal of a very bipartisan amendment to be brought to the floor, preserving our National Guard tactical air capability that underwrites our national defense. We asked on a bipartisan basis that the Pentagon show us their plan to recapitalize their aircraft as they bring down the number of planes that they have in the U.S. Air Force. We said, what's your plan? If you're worried about conflicts with China, if you're worried about issues abroad, for every 2 planes we are retiring, we are creating and initiating only 1 new plane to replace that. So places like Selfridge Air Force Base, which are home to important fighter aircraft, don't know what the plan is after the A-10s depart. So we had a bipartisan agreement that just would say, hey, Pentagon, tell us what your plan is. We'd like to know what fighters are coming behind that. And unfortunately, it was ruled out of order when we weren't able to talk about it. Despite having 30 bipartisan co-sponsors, a tremendous show of support from the Air National Guard, this will not receive a vote on the floor. So, as a CIA officer and Pentagon official and someone who has spent my entire life looking at national security issues, not through a political lens, but through a national security lens exclusively, it is hard to watch my colleagues across the aisle turn the Pentagon budget into a culture war buffet, particularly on the issue of choice, as we have the Supreme Court in real time making decisions about a woman's right to choose. Do not believe my colleagues when they say that they now are done pursuing a woman's right to choose. Look at what they do, not what they say. And with that, I yield back.